Origins 2015. I'm here at the booth of Z-Man Games, and I'm sitting down with Evan, who has kindly agreed to tell us a little bit about a game called Abraca, which is a game of absent-minded wizards that may have drunk too much magic potion and they don't even remember the spells that they know how to cast. They can cast them, but they don't know exactly what they are, those spells that they're casting. Can you explain to us how this may work?
Okay, well, like you said, you're playing as rather forgetful wizards. You know what spells it's possible to cast, but you don't really remember which ones you actually have currently in your power to cast. So the unique thing about this game is you can't see your hand, but everyone else can, and you can see everybody else's hands. And on your turn, you're going to say a spell's name and number, and everybody else is going to tell you if you have one of those among your spell stones, and they'll take it out, and say this was the correct one, and put it here on the public information board. And then resolve the effect of that spell, and go on with your turn. And it's kind of a push your luck mechanic where you guess your first spell, and then you can keep guessing, or you may pass.
So here are the possible spells, and if I remember correctly, at the beginning of the turn, 4 are taken out and they cannot be seen. They're only game effects that can reveal them to individual players, and then 6 are showed here in the perfect information.
For a 3-player game.
Of a 3-player game,
Depends on the number of players.
So how many would be with other...
For 2 players, we take 12 out to start the game. For 3 players, we take 6, like you said. For 4 and 5, because the game will do 2 to 5, 4 and 5 you don't take any out.
Okay, so but the idea would be that we take out some random ones and we put them here so that all the players know that these spells are not available, right? That there's only a certain number of other spells that are available. So for example, this would go here. So now we know that there's only another one available.
Yeah, and every player gets 6 life tokens to start. That's your maximum life total. And you're trying to cast your spells in order to end the round in one of 2 ways. Get rid of all of your spell stones in a turn, and if you ever end your turn with less than 5 and there's this pool here to choose from, you will draw back up to 5. So playing out all your spell stones for most of the game until this runs out means that you have to play all 5 in a single turn, which is difficult to do because of one of the restrictions with playing stones is after your first spell in a turn, for your first spell you can choose any of these 1 through 8, but afterwards the spells you cast next must have a number equal to or higher than the previously cast spells. So once you go above the number for a spell you still have, you can't do that. Or the other way to end the round is to deplete yourself or another player of all of their life tokens. If you ever fail to cast a spell, you'll actually lose a life token, which is...
And your round is over, another player will go and guess. I mean, your turn is over.
Your turn will be over, yes.
So basically, just to exemplify, you're sitting there, you do not see what you have, and you say, I'm gonna try and cast the spell number 3, the Sweet Dream. And I see what you have, and I tell you, yes, you do have it. So we put this in the display here for everybody to see, and you resolve the effect of the spell number 3, Sweet Dream, that you just cast, in which case you roll a die and you gain some life back. And this is a die that only has a 1, 2, and a 3 result. And then you could say a pass, in which case you refill your hand, or you can try again and say, I think I have a number 5, but you wouldn't be able to say 2 or 1 because you already said 3. And look, lucky you are, you do get a 5, and you resolve that.
Your next spell must be 5 or greater as it progressively goes up until you either fail or pass.
Okay.
Or run out of your stones.
One word about these ones that are left out, there is a spell that allows you to look at them, which is the spell number 4. You may look at one of the secret spell stones, and you can also keep it, and then you will score it at the end of the round, right?
It's to prevent at the end of the game, once we run out of this pile here in the center, it's to prevent there from being perfect information, because then one player could just completely solve the game state, basically. And it's also bonus points at the end of the game if you win a round or survive it.
Yeah, can you tell us about the scoring?
In the scoring, well, if like I mentioned before, if you run out of all your spell stones, you win, and everyone else immediately loses all their life tokens. They lose and you win. Or, say, in the 3-player game that we have set up here, if I cause another player to lose all their life tokens, they lose, I win because I caused it, and the third player could potentially still have life tokens. They survive. And the hierarchy in scoring is the winner gets 3 points, the loser gets 0, and anybody who survives gets 1 point. Secret spellstones, for anybody that wins or survives, are worth 1 point each.
And the winning condition is?
If you get to 8 points here on the score track, that triggers endgame, and normally that player might win, but there are potentials for tiebreakers as you max out at 8 points, and then there's a little tiebreaker.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the explanation. Actually, I already played this game, and then just after the game, I asked Evan to help me recapitulate it and teach it to you, my viewers. Later tonight, I'm gonna add a segment to this video telling you what I think about this game, which I just played. For now, I just want to say thanks to Evan and to Z-Man for allowing me to film this video. Thank you.
You're welcome.
When I hear of a game with a very silly, witty title, immediately I become suspicious. Because I think that the designer and the publisher look for a title that would allow specific targets of players to be interested. And if a title is too funny, too strange, too witty, actually I get the sense that maybe the publisher is not targeting the game to gamers. It's trying to reach the market of super casual non-gamers or party gamers. I immediately, in my head, put the game in the category of apples to apples, Taboo, Monopoly, Clue, this kind of games. All of which, incidentally, has a relatively serious sounding name. So actually, maybe that is a misunderstanding of mine. Or at least I think that the game designer or the publisher is presenting a game as a satire, as a game that you just are supposed to have a couple of laughs about as you're playing the game, and that's it. And that's a mistake in many cases, because when I saw a game called Abraca, what? I really thought that this was going to be a game of this kind. But then I was interested when I saw it played at Origins 2015, simply because of the unusual look of the game, with those plastic blocks with illustration only on one side. And I stopped by and I decided to give it a try, and I'm glad that I did, because actually that is a pretty enjoyable game. I enjoyed it. I filmed my video about it, the presentation of the game segment at Origins instead of somewhere else, simply because I do not own a copy, which is not necessarily a reflection of the fact that I did not like the game. It is a reflection of the fact that, believe it or not, I cannot afford to acquire, for review purposes, all of the games that I play that I would like to review. So in this case, I was able at least to show you the game, even though having to prioritize and not having an infinite budget. That is when I had to film the review. I hope that the audio was still good enough and that you got a good sense. At the end, this is a game in which you do not know the spells that you have, and you have to manage risks. I like the fact that I started playing the game. Of course, I would simply look at the spells that other players had to figure out what were the chances of me having certain spells. If they have a lot of those spells, then chances that I do have it, a certain spell, are low. But then I realized that there is a further wrinkle to it, which is of course pretty interesting, which comes from behavior. You have to look at the behavior of the other players and try to figure out why they're making certain choices. And that is something that you need to do, because it will give you a sense of what it is that they may be saying. I see that player B is seeing also the pieces of player A that I'm also seeing, and player A has a lot of certain kinds of spell,
and yet the player is not calling some, not trying to cast some spells that, based on what I see, the player should have a reasonable chance. For example, I don't see any fireballs around, and yet no one else is casting fireballs. Maybe they are seeing a lot of fireballs that I'm not seeing. Maybe I do have a lot of fireballs. So I try that maybe once, maybe I even go twice. And that's something that is really important. You can try to get a sense of what you may have, trying to figure out what it is that they are seeing based on the things that they do not feel comfortable assuming that they have. So this is something that is much more complicated sounding now that I'm mentioning it. I'm realizing this. Verbalizing it makes it sound much more complicated than when you're playing the game. It's pretty intuitive. But there are these two levels of assessing what you may have. One based on observation, one based on deduction. And at the end, of course, you'll only get a sense that you may have a chance, a better chance, a not so good of a chance. You will never have absolute knowledge. And at that point, the game is a bit of a push your luck. You have to decide if you want to go for 70% or 50%. If there is an action that will give you a big payoff and you decide that you want to take it, even if it's not likely that you will be able to cast a certain spell, that is also something that you can do, which will add fun and excitement to the game. It is also about taking risks. It is not about a calculation of what the best action under the circumstances may be. So you see actually that the personality of the players will emerge throughout this grid of options and deductions, which may seem pretty abstract and dry, but it's really not. You will see the player that likes to take risks and is going for crazy chain of actions. Players that are more conservative, they're happy with a single action that they get right, and they're waiting to glean more and try to get more information, because each time that a player does take an action, then they spend one of their tokens, one of their spells. They will replace it at the end, so you will also learn more about the kind of spells that they have, therefore what you may have. I like it. The basic idea is so simple. I cast spells, or try to cast spells that I do not know I have, but there is this process of figuring things out, which is a thinking process, but not to the point that, of course, it makes the game harder to play than it needs to be. The core mechanics is the opposite of fiddly. It's super simple and super intuitive. The thinking process has enough complexity and layers to make it engaging, but not to the point of making the game anywhere close to a brain burner. So I think that the game, with the cute, witty sounding title, does point to the fact that we are playing a very simple and light game, but not a simplistic one, not one without challenges and without rewards. The overall flow of the game is pretty fast, the game is simple to understand, and it's not that hard to master, meaning you can read the situation and figure out what the two best things for you to do are, but those options are still interesting, those options are still challenging, and then of course you have still the decision to make about how much risk you want to take. There's also a component of strategy based on the relative score. If I win a battle by destroying player B, then each of us will receive a certain amount of points. But I may decide to play a little more conservative. This round is enough for me to survive, because the situation on the score track is such that I do not necessarily need to win this turn. I still have enough of an advantage that even if this turn I just survive, then I may win by winning the next round. You may assess that you do not necessarily need to go for the big kill every time, based again on what other players are doing. Not being destroyed actively not being the one that is kicked out may be enough in some cases. So that also is a consideration that comes in your decisions, the decisions that you make about how much risk you should take. At the end, it is about assessing risks and taking the risks that you feel more comfortable taking, or that you want to take for the sake of it because you think it's going to be fun to try to summon the dragon. If the dragon does show up, it's going to be great. If the dragon doesn't show up, it's going to be devastating. Overall, the game looks really nice. The components are cute. One thing is that to prevent you from accidentally seeing the spells that you have, the holders of the spell tiles are sort of like embossed, so there's like a frame around the image. It's not like a block with the image staked on it. The image is within a little bit of a niche there, which means that sometimes players will have to look a little bit to make sure that the opponent has or does not have a certain spell the opponent is trying to cast. But that is really a minor thing. After a round or two, players will naturally start orienting the row of spells to facilitate the other players that are trying to see and to check if a spell is there or not. So that's a very minor production element, which some players, in my experience, have remarked as being a minor negative. But even if you see it as a negative, which I really do not, I never had that problem, it's definitely a minor one, as opposed to the fact that this game can really be fun to play. Abraca, what? Go past the silliness of the title and you will have a simple, light game which can be a filler. If players get a little bit serious about it and play conservatively, it may take a little longer than a filler, but personally I found it to be very engaging. The rounds are fast and they're pretty addictive. If you did not do very well in a round, you definitely want to play another one and then another one and then another one. But it's not one of those micro games that is over in 5 minutes and you play forever. It still has an overarching structure. The rounds are addictive. They have that addictive feel of very quick games, but you also have an overall narrative that develops from round to round and creates its own story. And overall, it is a fun, rewarding narrative. Abraca, what? Z-Man Publishing, a new game, simple, light, fun, with some decisions and some thinking that make the game interesting without making it too much of a thinking game. I enjoyed it. Give it a try. Maybe you'll enjoy it too.